What if I told you you could fix your client churn with two simple systems? By the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to implement these two systems in your agency so you can decrease your churn rate, increase your retention, increase your LTV, and make more money. These are the exact same systems that our partners are using, doing anywhere from 30K to 300K a month. And if you watch this video until the end, I'm going to show you exactly how you can implement these two systems in your agency completely for free. So the way I like to visualize the process of actually fixing churn, it's kind of like building a house. There's a lot of different pieces that are moving because churn is a complicated thing. It's not something that you just implement one thing and it kind of goes straight away. There are two kind of foundational principles that we use when trying to jump into these agencies and helping them decrease their churn rate. And very simply, it's prevention and detection. So prevention is the first half of things. When you're building a house, this is kind of like the blueprint. This is kind of what the architects put together to make sure the house is actually functionally stable, setting the correct expectations, maybe creating budgets, creating timelines for the builders, so on and so forth. And then we have detection. So prevention is basically what we do before the house is actually being built. And then detection is what happens throughout the build of the house or even after the build of the house to make sure that the house isn't cracking, everything is still structurally sound, and everything is going to plan. This is kind of how I like to approach the problem of actually trying to fix churn, because there's two different things I need to look at. We need to try have some sort of prevention systems to stop churn from arising in the first place. We want to make sure that we have some sort of detection or some sort of feedback loop that will allow us to understand what kind of red flags we can stop to identify issues before they begin escalating. And it's the exact same thing that we're going to apply to your agency. And these are basically the two systems that we're going to implement. In terms of prevention, this is going to be basically an onboarding system. The whole idea of this is that we stop churn from even happening in the first place by setting up the correct expectations and giving them a really, really good first impression to make sure everything goes smoothly. And the second part of it, which is a bit more complicated but really, really pays off, is detection. For results-based agencies, if you don't have a system which will allow you to detect when client results are slipping, when you need to give them a bit more attention, or any potential red flags that may arise, then you will lose that client, because ads are tough to run. You can be the best ad agencies ever. If you're managing over 100 clients, eventually results will start to slip. So having some sort of detection system will allow you to stay on top of it and act accordingly before the client starts complaining to you. And this is basically an overview of what the two systems are going to build. We're going to be building from scratch, automations, all the different workflows. I'm going to be showing you the complete behind the scenes insights into kind of what we're building. It's based on these two key principles that when we use these blueprints and these early detection systems, then churn can be predictable and most importantly preventable, will allow you to decrease your churn rate, increase your retention, increase your LTV, ultimately making you more money. So the first system that we're going to set up in this video is onboarding. Onboarding is one of the most powerful things you can do in your agency. If you've watched any of my previous videos going over agency systems, automations, any of that good stuff, that you know I love onboarding, because onboarding is the first impressions that you actually give to your clients. And it's very, very important you make it work. A recent study by Totango showed that companies with a structured onboarding process saw around a 12% increase in customer retention. Onboarding is the first impression your customer has of you, so it's very important you do this right. If you have a very small agency, let's say it's just you and 5 different clients, it's very easy to give your clients an A-class onboarding experience because you are the onboarding experience, and all you have to do is put a bit more effort on the calls. However, as you continue growing, you get more CSMs in and more people are part of your operation, it becomes harder and harder to have a A-class onboarding experience at scale. So that's what we're going to set up in this video. We're going to be setting up these different systems that will allow you to give your clients an A-class experience to avoid delays, give your clients a fabulous first impression so you can really, really impress them and hopefully get them to stick to the actual service. So we'll basically be setting up 4 different items in order to actually make this work. One thing I will say, guys, there's a million different things that you can do to make onboarding perfect. This is not what we're going for in this video. I've got a ton of videos going over onboarding specifically. What I'm trying to do here is giving you 4 simple action items that you can follow that will allow you to have higher leverage in your onboarding process to give your clients a better experience and hopefully get them to stick. We're going to be building out each and every single one of these items from scratch. So let's get straight into it. The first thing we're going to do is have an internal onboarding form. All this basically is a very, very simple form that you or your sales guys can actually fill in when you actually collect payment from clients. The idea of this form is very simple. It's just an internal alert that whenever a sales guy closes someone, let's say you get a referral and you actually close someone or whatever, so you have some sort of new client coming in your agency, you complete this form and your internal system knows, okay, cool, we have a new client coming in. We're going to be using this as a trigger for a lot of the automations later on in this video, but it's very, very important that we get the internal onboarding form set up in the first place, because this is basically our alert mechanism to let us know, okay, cool, we have a new client, let's go actually do something about it. So this doesn't have to be anything complicated. In this example, I'm just gonna be using Typeform, but honestly, this does not really matter whatsoever. You can use whatever, any sort of form platform you have, Go level, Form.io, even a Google form. It honestly doesn't matter, because this is just internal facing. And all we're doing here is creating a form that your closers, or again, even yourself, can fill out every single time you close a client. Typeform has AI, so I'm just going to get AI to build it for me just to speed things up. Build me a internal onboarding form that I can share with my sales team so we can log whenever a new client comes in. This should allow the closer to log in the client name, the client email, how much they will close for, the retainer, the start date, and any notes from an actual sales call, as well as some of the closer's information. And just like that, it should go ahead and create that form for me. We might have to modify it slightly, but in this case, we don't really care too much. This is just internally facing. The whole idea of this is that we use this as an initial form that we complete whenever we actually close the client, because this is going to be triggering a lot of different automations in the future. So in this case, we have the client name, perfect. What's the client email address? Perfect. What's the retainer amount? Cool. Start date, notes from the sales calls, what's your closer's name, and what is the closer's email address. I probably will remove the email address, but whatever, we'll leave that for now. And very simply, now we have a form. So now whenever you close a client, you share this form with your team and they go ahead and fill it in very simply. So we have the client's email address, the retainer amount, the start date, notes from the sales call, and the actual closer name. If you have different products, you can also add a different question, which is, hey, which product did they actually close them for? But for now, let's just assume we have one specific product that everyone's going to be selling, and that's pretty much it. So one thing that's important to kind of note here, why I added in, is notes from the actual sales call. This is something that we're going to be adding into the actual CRM after, because it's important that when we kind of move through the onboarding process, this isn't more so related to systems, it's more so related to, in general, how you can have a really good onboarding process. But you don't want to make it seem like every new conversation a client is having is a brand new start in your agency. So ideally, the flow of from sales to, for example, the onboarding call or even the launch call is very, very structured in the sense that I've told everyone my life story 3 different times. It should just be, hey, I told Mark my life story in the sales call, and by the time it gets to the onboarding call, the CSMs who's taken an onboarding call already knows a bit about my story and why I actually chose to sign up. This is very important, guys. This same thing goes for the onboarding form. Like when you set up for clients in a while, you don't want to collect client information and just ignore it. We want to collect that client information and start using it as leverage to make the experience very, very seamless. Imagine you are on a sales call and someone asks you 10 different questions about your life, and you dove deep into each one of those problems. And then by the time you went to the onboarding call, you're speaking to someone that has no clue who you are or anything about you. You want to make sure that throughout every call that you have with your clients, you're marking these notes within the system. And this is what this form allows you to do very simply. It's a very simple onboarding form that you will use in your agency, but this will allow you, especially at scale, to make sure that that experience is maintained across the different stages. So in this case, the closer will submit this form, and then by the time the CSM comes around, we're going to be logging this into the system. So the CSM will be able to see this actual notes from the sales call and review them before the actual onboarding call, or before, for example, calling them on to welcome them. So what I'm going to do here is change the design. You know me, orange, or make it orange and white. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. We've got our logo there and I'm good with this. So let's go ahead and pull it up on Google just to make sure everything's good. And we're actually going to submit it just to have an example. So it looks like the branding didn't save. Small things that matter, guys. I will go ahead and save it again though. So here, do I need to maybe change something so it saves? Let's do that. All right, cool. I'm going to publish edits. And now hopefully if I reload this, nice, awesome, cool. This is our form. We can fill it in very now, but we have the client name, the client email address, the retainer amount, the project start date, notes from the sales calls, the closer's name, and then the closer's email address. Very simply now, we have our onboarding form. And very simply, guys, that's pretty much it. We now have the first item done of the onboarding process. Now we're going to be building 3 more items now, but before we move on, it's important to highlight that when you're actually creating this form, the most important part of this is that your closers actually use it. There's no point in you creating this because this is basically the foundation for the rest of the systems that we're going to be using throughout the rest of this video. So it's very, very important that if you actually create this form, you need to drill it down to your closers or even whoever is taking your sales call, that they actually need to use this form every single time someone gets closed, because this is what will allow you to prevent anyone from slipping through the gaps. Make sure that whoever is taking your sales calls and actually closing your clients, even if it's you, actually go ahead and use this form. What we like to do to actually ensure this is that at the end of each call, we send a quick reminder message in Slack to the relevant closer saying, hey, you just finished sales call with XYZ. go ahead and update your CRM with a status or complete an onboarding form just to give them a reminder. But in your case, you have a small team, don't stress too much about that. Just make sure you drill it into them. Hey, did you complete the onboarding form today for XYZ? And every single day, they will get used to it eventually. And don't forget, you are the boss there. So if they're not doing something, then they should do it if you tell them to. Second item here is the first automation. So in this case, now we're building out the first automation. We've got our onboarding form, which will basically act as the trigger of how we're actually logging the client internally. Now we want to deal with a quick onboarding automation, which will basically take care of what should happen immediately after the client is signed. This is where we're going to be doing different things such as adding them to our project management system, maybe notifying our team, maybe creating welcome tasks for our team to get them started, maybe sending off different welcome emails, or even sending out different reminders for onboarding forms externally. But very simply here, this is where we're basically taking care of everything that happens as soon as a client is closed. The way we want to think about this is right now the client has been onboarded. Now what we want to do is basically go through each of the different items that they need to do or that we need to do to avoid any sort of delay. So for example, if every single time the onboarding is complete, or let's say the client gets closed, sorry, you want to go ahead and actually send them a welcome email, this automation takes care of it. So now you don't have to wait for someone to remember to send a welcome email and then maybe they get 1 day late. We're basically just reinforcing the decision straight away. There's a couple of different ways we can do this, but I'm going to show you in a second. This is nothing complicated. Literally all we're doing is just breaking down exactly what happens as soon as the payment is received or as soon as the client is closed and setting it up so it does it automatically, removing work from our team and decreasing delay in the onboarding process. So before we actually do that, I'm going to obviously give you an example of what this could look like, but it's very, very helpful if you just take a second to think what needs to happen as soon as the client gets closed. For example, do I need to create some Google Drive folders? Do I need to notify the team? Who do I need to notify? Do I need to maybe get the CSM to call them? Just have a quick think about exactly what happens and kind of map it out, because this will make your life a lot easier when you actually set up the automation. This is everything I need to do as soon as the client is onboarded. We're going to be setting up a separate automation for after they actually complete their onboarding form, which is the external form. But for now, we just want to have a quick think about, okay, what I need to do extremely after. Use my examples as inspiration. This will obviously change depending on what type of agency you're on, and what specific your service delivery actually looks like. So you don't have to copy this exactly. So in order to actually automate this, I'm going to be using make.com. If you haven't heard of this, all this is a very, very simple no-code automation tool. It's similar to Zapier N8N. The only reason we're using these tools is because it makes it a lot easier to maintain, but also create these different automations to automate different parts of your agency. Again, what we're trying to do here is basically make it as easy as possible for you to onboard new clients. And this is one of the tools that we're going to use to actually automate that process. So within here, this is where we're going to be creating different tools such as notifications, onboarding emails, so on and so forth. And the whole idea of it is that we set up this automation once, and now whenever the form is complete, it goes ahead and runs automatically for me. So the first thing I want to do is actually set up a trigger. The trigger is the most important part of any automation because it's what actually causes it to happen. In our case, our trigger is actually going to be a type form being completed. This is why the form that we talked about earlier is super, super important, because if that form is not complete, we have no sort of trigger. So in this case, I'm going to be searching for type form. I'm going to go over to watch responses. And what this is now basically going to do is that whenever a form is complete, and obviously I'm going to select a specific form, it's going to go ahead and trigger this automation, which is super, super important because this is what we're going to be using to actually trigger our automation and start the client's onboarding journey within our internal systems. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new webhook. I'm going to go ahead and in this case, I already have my Typeform connection, but if you didn't have it, you can just press add. And by the way, guys, this doesn't just work for Typeform. I mean, for example, if I just close this for a second and I'll show you, you can use this for so many different things. You can use this for Google Form, just like that. You can also use it for high level. I mean, any sort of form platform. The beautiful thing about these different platforms is that they integrate with so many different softwares, which is obviously very, very functioning. You don't have to dig into any API docs or anything like that. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and select my form. I'm going to put enabled and I'm just going to press OK. I'm going to save this. And now, very simply, guys, what I'm going to do is just to show you, I'm going to have this. I'm actually going to stop this for a second. I'm going to go back to my form and I'm going to quickly fill this out. Just so it has that data that we can actually map. I'm going to go ahead and close John Smith. The email is going to be test@gmail.com. Retainer was a big 4K retainer. The start date is the 12th of the 12th, 2025. Notes, XYZ. Obviously, I didn't have a sales call with John, unfortunately. So I'm just going to edit here. And then closer is going to be Leo. The closer's email address, I'm not going to leave that. So then I'm just going to go ahead and run this. And what we should see now, if we wait for new data, is if I go ahead and actually submit this form, this will now go ahead and populate, as you can see over here. And if you go over to answers and open these up, you can see all the different answers that I actually entered on the actual form, which is what we want. So in this case now, we have our data. Now we have to talk about, okay, how are we actually going to make this work and how are we actually going to pass this on to the next steps. if I quickly go back to my process breakdown over here, all we want to do in this case is we want to trigger this whenever the form is submitted, which has already been done. We're going to go ahead and add them to our project management tool so we can basically start creating a record of that client within our system. We're going to go ahead and actually notify our team on Slack saying, hey, this person's been closed. We're then going to go ahead and actually create a welcome task in our project management system for the CSM to actually call the client and welcome them to the company. Then we're going to send a welcome email to the client, and then we're going to go ahead and initiate something else. But to be honest, I'm going to remove this part and bring it back up in the later automation because at this point it's not 100% relevant and not 100% necessary. So basically the 4 steps we're going to do. This is super simple. Like, there's so many different ways you can do this using AI to make this a lot more complicated. But in this case, we're not trying to make it perfect. I'm just going to give you very, very simple things that you can implement straight away into your agency to help you improve your churn rate. Remember, this is just one of the 2 systems we're actually setting up. Right now, we're tackling onboarding. We're in the second step of onboarding. After this, I'm going to show you how you can have a client management system, which will allow you to look after your existing clients. Because again, think of it as we're tackling 2 different problems right now. We're tackling the first problem, which is making sure you kind of bring people on and have them kind of brought along the right way in your agency with the correct expectations, the correct impressions. But then you have a whole second end of the spectrum, which is actually just maintaining results. Because it is hard to do for lead gen agencies, especially when you're managing more than 100 clients. I mean, it can be very, very stressful. And that's what the second system will do. Nevertheless, right now we're focusing on onboarding. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing I'm going to do within make.com is I'm going to go ahead and actually set up or add them to a project management system. Now, in this case, this doesn't really matter what you use. This integrates with ClickUp, HighLevel if you want it to, any sort of platform or project management platform you can add onto it. But in this case, I'm going to be going over to a platform that we built out a while back in an older video. So this is an example of a test platform that we built out a while back in one of our older videos. As you can see over here, we have different projects. Those projects have a different task assigned to them. Very, very simple. This is really nothing complicated. It's just an example of a project management tool where we're actually going to be adding our clients. Now, in this case, this is actually built on Noloco. So in this case, I'm going to search for Noloco. I'm going to go ahead and actually create a record. And in this case, I'm basically creating a client record. So in this case, I've got my connection sorted. You can use whatever tool. It doesn't have to specifically be Noloco. You can use ClickUp, Asana, whatever it may be. And I'm just going to go ahead and actually create a new project record. So you can see here, I'm going to go project. So over here, we have all the different fields that we're looking for, which is the map of answers, very simply. And we can basically get started. So for the start date, I'm going to go ahead and enter the answer from the actual form. When it is the client's start date. For the company notes, I'm basically going to enter those original notes that we got from the closers here, notes from Salesforce. For the project name, I'm just going to enter the client name. And then I can enter the retainer here as well. I can enter the client's email address, which is right here. And I can also enter the status, which in this case is just default onboarding. And honestly, guys, that's pretty much it. We don't have to make this too complicated. So now, for example, just to give you an idea, if I just go ahead and rerun the previous step, what's going to happen now is go ahead and create that project in our project management tool. And now if we go back to our projects, within our app, we can see John Smith over here. The start date was 9 days ago. The same information. We can see our company notes, and we can also see the email and whatnot, which has been automatically added in. And the whole idea of this is now, whenever this form over here is complete, it goes ahead and actually automatically adds a record in our project management system, which is great. Now we need to talk about the next step. Nothing too complicated so far. We've triggered this from the form being complete. Now we've gone ahead and run this and created a record in a project management system. What I want to do next is actually alert the team. Now, in this case, what I'm going to be using is Slack to actually send this alert message. This is how most companies communicate with their team, but it doesn't really matter. You can use whatever different platform you may have. In this case, I'm going to search for Slack. I'm going to go send a message. And again, if I wanted to add a connection, I'll just press add and add a connection manually. Now, in this case, I'm just going to send this to an automation testing channel. But again, it doesn't really matter. You can choose whatever channel you want. The whole idea of this message, I will just send a notification to the quick team that I know, hey, a client's been closed. So in this case, I'm going to go for channels. I'm going to go for automation errors. And for the text, I'm just going to say a very simple text to make it up for me. New client closed for X, new line. Let's give them the best possible experience. Again, something simple as that. You can make this a lot nicer. So I'm going to put new client close for dollar amount retainer. And this is basically going to be, again, coming in from the form. I'm going to include the project name and also the client's email along with the actual start date. So the team has some information as to when they're starting. And then I'm going to say, let's give them the best possible experience. In an ideal world, you would use the block kit builder to make this look a lot nicer. But right now, we're just going to send a basic message. It's going to look ugly. It's going to look boring, but doesn't matter. If I was doing this probably though, I would set up a block kit builder message, which I have a button that will link us directly to the client project, so on and so forth. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to just re-trigger this, and might fail actually because it might not let us create to the same projects with the same email. So I believe it's not going to let us create two different projects with the same email. So I'm just going to quickly delete that previous record that we created a second ago. And then we're going to basically trigger this again to make sure that we have this kind of set up properly, which one example of that Slack message, basically. We could also trigger this by itself by going like this. I might be a bit lazy and I don't want to enter all these information. So again, I'm just going to run this again. And now it's going to create that project and I'll just send them Slack message. So now if I open up Slack, you can see I've got that very, very simple. This is the client been closed for 4K. We have the name. This should have been an email. So we're going to change that now. We have a start date just to give them best possible experience. Literally the whole idea of that is that we're going to send a client a message, let them know, hey, you know, we've actually gone ahead and close a new client. I would make it look a lot prettier, but it doesn't have to be pretty right now. I'm quickly just going to change this to actual email. If you go over here, we can add the actual client email. So that's actually correct. That's pretty much it for this step. So right now, we've basically triggered this as soon as the form gets complete. We've created a record in a project management system, and we've actually created a Slack message. Now we're going to move to the next step, which is actually creating a task. Now in this case, it's going to be very, very similar to what we did before, where we're creating a project. So I'm going to go create a new record. And I'm kind of just going to speed things up slightly, guys, just to kind of avoid boring you guys out. But in this case, I'm going to add a new task, which is going to be call client. The start date is going to be today. So I'm just going to put here now. And the due date is going to be 1 day from now. So I'm going to actually, let's do it. Yeah, we'll do 1 day from now. So I'm going to go now. And then we're going to add 1 day. So it's going to be due tomorrow, basically. And for the task notes, I'm going to say, new client has been onboarded. Let's call them to congratulate them for joining the team and welcome them to their pod. Something as simple as that. Doesn't have to be anything complicated. The CSM should already know. And by the way, if you're not doing this, this is a very, very good thing to do. Whenever you kind of onboarding a new client, get the relevant CSM to actually just give them a call and be like, hey, you know, welcome to the team. Just reinforce that decision as much as possible. The key thing I'm going to do here, guys, is very simply, I'm going to be assigning them to the same project. So we have everything organized within a project management system. So as you can see here, I'm assigning them to the project we created in the previous step. And then for the employee, I'm going to choose an example employee, which in this case will be the relevant CSM. You can also make this dynamic based on a closer or whatnot. But for now, I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. We've created a trigger, which now goes ahead and aligns itself whenever the form is completed. We've created a project within the project management system. We've sent the team an internal notification that I'm know, hey, we've gone ahead and actually trigger this, and we've gone ahead and actually created a task for the CSM to give them a call. Now, what we're going to do here is very simply just create a welcome email that we're going to send to the clients as soon as the form gets complete. Think of it such as a quick, very simple. In this case, you direct them to different things, such as the onboarding form, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but also just, again, congratulate them actually joining, give them a bit more testimonials, and just reinforce their decisions even more. So in this case, I'm going to go for Gmail. I'm going to go send a new email. And again, you can do this for Outlook, wherever you want. In this case, I'm just going to be using my Gmail connection. As you can see, it's expired. So I'm just going to be adding a new one. I'm going to sign in with Google. And once I'm logged in, I'm just going to continue, and it'll basically just automatically authenticate it for me. So I've got until June 19, 2026 to reauthorize your connection. Awesome. So over here, it's very simple. We're basically just going to be prepare an email that's going to be automatically sent out. It just allows for any sort of removal of the delays in the actual process because it's going to go automatically. So in this case, I'm going to add a new recipient address, which is going to be the email that we have from the actual client, which is going to be over here. The subject is going to be welcome. And what I'm going to do here is, because I don't want to actually send this out collectively, I'm going to go over here and change the body type to raw HTML. And I'm going to go over to ChatGPT. Whenever you're sending off emails using any sort of these kind of no-code platforms, you want to have it in HTML because it just makes it look a lot nicer. So in this case, I'm going to ask it to create an example onboarding email that I can send to clients when I first welcome them to my team, which in this case is called bad marketing. This is just an example for a YouTube video. Give me the output in HTML. Also include some fake testimonials to reinforce the client decisions as an example. And now what it should do is go ahead and actually generate that email for me. Again, the reason we're doing it HTML is because it will look a lot nicer. You're going to see the difference. If you just add as text, the same way, for example, we did for the tasks, and just add the raw text here, it's going to look very ugly in the email, and we don't want to have to make it look ugly. Thankfully, we have ChatGPT to do all of this for me. I'm just going to wait for this to copy. We're going to copy that straight into the automation, and then from there, we'll add the different variables to make it a bit more personalized, and then basically go from there. And there's a lot more you can do from here to make it a lot better, or you can make it a bit more custom using AI. And as soon as it's done, we're going to paste it into make.com, and then we're basically going to send it off, and then we'll be done for the second step of the onboarding, guys. So over here, it's gone ahead and completed that for us. I'm going to go back to content. I'm just going to paste it in. Now, there probably is a lot we need to change it, to be honest, regarding the variables. As you can see here, I'm just going to remove a lot of these though, because these are not what we need to change for now. I'm just going to put Leo as the sender name. It's just footer content. This is basically just a quick email that says, hey, these are the notes, different variables that we don't really care about right now. So I'm just going to remove these. just to keep it a bit simpler. We can make this a bit better by adding a bit more of the links. And we're going to change this after when we have the different onboarding forms and whatnot. So in this case, I'm going to add the first name though, and I'm going to be lazy and just add the actual name. We could though theoretically just add the first name by splitting this and then just doing the first name. But again, let's not make it complicated. Let's just go ahead and add it in. And I think we should be good to go. So now we have our email, which looks beautifully formatted. And we can actually test this out probably. So I'm going to send it to myself. I'm going to put the first name is going to be John Smith, and the email, I'm just going to enter my email for now. When we do this automatically, it'll be sent out to the client directly. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So we have our mailbox. If you open up this new email, wow, look at that. That actually looks very, very clear. So we have, you're officially onboarded. Welcome to the team. We have our links to our different kickoff tools, our link to our onboarding forms, access to your key accounts and what happens next, how we'll communicate, and again, some testimonials just to kind of reinforce the decision. So this actually looks very, very clean. And this is a great email. We've been able to do this completely automatically just from a form being submitted. And that's pretty much the first automation done, guys. So now what's going to happen is I'm just going to rename this onboarding 1.1 so we keep this nice and clean. #1. And now, guys, what happens is whenever this automation or the form is complete, it's going to go ahead and actually create a project within our project management tool. It's going to go ahead and actually create a task within our project management tool as well to actually call the client for the CSM. It's going to go ahead and send a Slack message to our team channel notifying everyone that someone's been onboarded. And it's going to go ahead and actually send this beautiful onboarding email to the actual client, which looks great. And that's pretty much it, guys. There are different ways you can make this better. What I'm giving you here is kind of like the base scratch version. But the way you have to think about it is this is kind of like a margarita pizza. That's what I've done now. You can do different things here, like adding your own toppings to kind of make this really, really your own and make this actually work for your agency. So for example, you could add a bit of pepperoni and automatically create Google Drive folders. You can add some other topping. I've got the same picture here, but let's say, I don't know, some peppers, depending on what you like, and go ahead and now automatically create a reminder for them to complete the onboarding form and kind of make this your own pizza. What I have right now is basically the live basics. There's a lot more we can add to this. I want to give you some actionable feedback you can implement straight away. And hopefully this is what we've done so far. So we've got our onboarding form, which is our internal onboarding form, which your closers will complete. As soon as they complete it, it goes ahead and triggers the automation we just built now, which will now automatically send off a welcome email to the client, create a project in our project management tool, create a task, and also send a message to your team, letting them know that someone has been onboarded. Now we basically have to work out on the other side of things, which is basically what happens when a client gets onboarded and what they actually need to do. So in this case, we're going to be building out two different things, similar to what we did in the first part. The only difference here is that now we're building out external flows. So over here, we're basically going to be building out a external onboarding form. This is basically a form which your client will complete to give you all the different information you need to actually prepare or start working on their service delivery. And this is mainly for agencies. Now, if you want more information on this, I literally have a 22-minute video going over how to create a perfect onboarding form from my experience, creating over 100 different onboarding forms. But in this case, we need to keep it nice and simple. And just to give you a very, very quick recap, this is what we need to collect. So first things first, we need an email. This is very important because this is what we're going to be using in the automation to actually tie that specific form completion to the actual contact and the project. So that's some very, very important thing we need to collect. Then we actually need to collect the service delivery information. This is basically any information that you need to actually complete and begin working on their service. So for example, let's say you're a lead gen agency and you want to start begin working on the ads. You might need their website. You might need some sort of logos. You might need the ICP, different things like that. You actually need to get started on your work form. And this is what we're actually going to go ahead and complete. Apart from that, we're going to add some fun little add-ons. Think of this as ammunition for things you can use later on if you need to. I, for example, like to ask, what's your favorite sports team? Do you have any fun pets? Just some information you can use to kind of build a bit of a rapport with the client. And then we can also have goals, just re-outline their goals. So you have that documented and you can reference that later when you start getting them some more wins to collect some really, really fire testimonials. Logos, this just for general things. It should be separate from the service delivery add-ons. We like to get client gifts and we use logos to actually do that. You don't have to do that in your case. And after, potentially even referrals. What we actually tested recently is basically adding a referral option at the very end of the form so they can share the emails of a couple of different people that might be interested in the program. It doesn't work for everyone, but in some cases, if you want to add it in, it can really, really work. All we're doing here is creating a very simple onboarding form that we're going to share with clients as soon as they actually build it out. We're going to go over to our good friend Typeform and we're basically going to build this out. Thankfully, we have AI to actually help me out. And I'm basically going to ask it to actually build out the onboarding form for me. So let's go back over here. Build out a client onboarding form that I can share with clients. This should collect their email, some service delivery information that I need to service them for my lead gen agency, brackets such as their ICP, what product I actually sell, the most profitable product, testimonials. Then we're also going to collect and ask them if they have any dogs. If they do have dogs, we're going to ask them what the dog name is. We're also going to ask them for their favorite sports team. And then we're going to ask them to upload any logos for their company, along with breaking down what their goals are for the next 3, 6, and 12 months. And at the very end of the form, we're basically going to ask them if they want to earn an extra $1,000. If they say yes to that question, then we're going to go ahead and ask them for someone else's email that they can refer to us. Thankfully, hopefully, AI will actually go ahead and build this out for me. But the whole idea of this is that you're building a form that you're going to share with clients, more so an external onboarding form, which is where you're going to be collecting all this different information. In reality, it doesn't need to be a form, but it's very easier to have in a form. First things first, because you're going to have everything documented. But secondly, it kind of makes it a bit easier. You can go through these questions on an actual onboarding call, but sometimes it can feel rushed and the client might have enough time to actually think about these questions. And secondly, you want to save some time for your CSMs. There's no point making a call 45 minutes if it can just be 50 minutes and they can just fill out the form beforehand. So over here, you can see we have our email address, describe your ICP, what products you sell, what's the most popular product, please share any testimonials you have. Do you need dogs? If yes, yes, nice. What's your dog's name? What's your favorite sports team? Please look at company logos. What are your business goals? Would you like to earn an extra 1,000? And then emails. That looks pretty good now. We have our form, and I'm going to change the format just to make it on brand orange. I'm going to close this email address. I'm just going to use the same one. And that's pretty much it, guys. So we have our form. I'm just kind of checking this if we need anything else. I might remove the partial submit point because we don't need it in this case. Someone should go through your whole form and actually complete it. I think apart from that, we should be good to go. So we can go ahead and publish this. And this again is a form that we're now going to send to clients. This form is important. It's similar to the kind of form that we created previously. It's important that you kind of drill into your clients how important this form actually is. So there's two different ways you can do that, because this form is basically going to act as a way that you can actually collect the different information before you're happy to actually hop on a call. You don't want it to be a thing where this form is completed either right before the call or after the call, because then that kind of defeats the whole purpose. So two different ways to do this. First things first, we set reminders. So as soon as they complete, they can basically get initiated in a reminder sequence where 3 hours after they get onboarded, it sends them a reminder by SMS. 6 hours after that, it sends them another reminder. Then 12 hours after that, it basically creates a task for the CSM to actually call them and remind them to actually complete the onboarding form. This is just a way to actually hold them accountable to complete the form. But to be honest, guys, it should never get that far. Drill into your sales guys that they kind of need to emphasize the importance of the onboarding form and how important it is that they complete it as soon as possible. And the way I like to kind of do this is, first things first, you can incentivize them by giving them a small reward. But secondly, you kind of need to frame the onboarding form as kind of a start point for their journey to achieve X goal. Probably the sales guys will be a lot better at explaining this than me, because I'm more sales guys, I'm an ops guy. But the way you want to frame it is as, okay, cool, when you complete this onboarding form, it will help you reach X goal, because that's what's going to allow us to basically getting started on work. So that's worked really well and actually decreasing delays. I recommend you do it. But basically, yeah, right here we have reminders. And then another way you can do is basically hide that booking calendar for the check-in call or the onboarding call after the onboarding form completion. So you can very easily set up redirect. So as soon as the form is complete, it goes ahead and redirects them to the calendar booking page. And that way it makes sure that anyone who's hopping on that launch call or the onboarding call, sorry, has actually gone ahead and completed our onboarding form, because this is basically going to act as ammunition for your CSM, and it's important that it gets completed before. The only thing that's important to do, if you are going to do the second step over here, make sure that there's not a situation where someone just doesn't complete the onboarding form and they just don't book the onboarding call, because you're going to get a chargeback 1,000%. If they don't do anything, they're going to just give you a chargeback, which you obviously don't want. Which is why if we're implementing this, we also need to implement reminders and also accountability for the team. So if they don't complete it after a day, then you could go ahead and actually call them every single day to actually complete the onboarding form, and potentially different system if they're having any difficulties. So right now we've actually gone ahead and built out our onboarding form. Now we need to move on to the last step of this whole onboarding process, which is the second automation. This is the automation that's going to trigger whenever the onboarding form, the external onboarding form, is actually complete. And very simply, this is basically what happens as soon as the onboarding form gets complete. And there's so many different things you can add to this, but in this example, just have a think, okay, cool, what can I do before the actual launch call, and what can I do as soon as the form gets complete? In this case, what we're going to do is going to send a thank you message to the client. We're going to basically stop any reminders, which, to be honest, I'm actually going to remove this for now because we don't need to work on this. We don't want to make this unnecessarily complicated. But what we're going to do is going to save the responses to the actual project. We're going to go ahead and send a thank you message, and then we're going to create tasks for the team to actually begin working on a specific project. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to go back to within my automation, and I'm going to go and actually just create a new automation. So I'm going to go open this up. And I'm going to go ahead and actually create a new scenario. And the trigger for this is going to be Typeform again. It doesn't really matter which platform we're using to actually for forms, but in this case, we use Typeform twice. I'm going to create a new webhook. And in this case, I'm going to choose my second form, which should be this one, hopefully. I'm going to go ahead and save. I'm going to save this. And to be honest, we might already have some data come through. Maybe not. But when we complete the form, we'll have it come through, basically, which to be honest, we probably should do now before we can do anything else. So let me go ahead and quickly actually complete this form. And over here, I'm just going to fill this out. So the most important thing is right now, I'm basically filling this out as a client. So I'm actually going to use the same email that I used previously. So let me make sure I actually have that exact email, test@gmail.com. And then I'm just going to fill this out. Look at that, we have conditional logic. So I said no, it didn't ask me for logs. Pretty cool. So response team. Here I'm uploading logos. Base install. And then over here, we have the referral. Yes. And it asks me to actually refer. So in this case, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to trigger this. And I'm just going to go press submit. And then what we should see over here is this answers coming in. And we see now we can actually just create the onboarding form. All right. So first thing we need to do is we need to actually find the client project. So over here, I'm going to go search. And very simply here, I'm just basically searching for that client within our system to make sure we can actually have a match. So in this case, I'm going to go to my connection. I'm going to go to the project database. And within the project database, I'm going to search by email. The reason why we include that email is very important that I use the same email. You can also do this, use number or some other different effects. But for now, I'm just going to use email is equal to, and I'm going to enter the email over here. And now if I go ahead and run this, you should see, it should be able to get my test@gmail.com. It should have put up that project we created a second ago, which it has, as you can see here. So now we have our project. Now we're going to basically do is store all those different responses into our system. So for this, I'm going to go to local. I'm going to go actually update a record. I'm going to go for project. And I'm basically storing all these different form responses from the actual onboarding form in that project we created in the previous automation. I'm going to enter the record ID, which is what I searched in the last step. And then for company notes, I'm basically just dump all of this. So literally all of this. Now, obviously, you should make this look a lot nicer, to be honest, about adding the actual question name. So you have a record of this. What we usually like to do is we have different fields for these things directly within the actual project system to make it just a bit more kind of formatable. And if we ever need to reference it later, it's easier to actually pull in. But for now, we're just being a bit lazy to kind of keep pushing this through. Over here, we have all this information. From here, guys, there's a lot of different things you can do, even before we move on to the next steps. If a project is not found, what we usually do is set up a side route that basically goes ahead and sends the team an alert saying, hey, someone completed the onboarding form, but they haven't actually gone ahead and linked it to a project. And then they can actually just check in to see who that actually was. That's just basically for emergencies to say someone doesn't have an email. You never want to be in a position where someone completes the onboarding form and nothing happens, which is why you basically have those stop saves to prevent that from actually happening. What we'll do here is now, because we're asking for referrals, if someone said yes for the referral, then I'll basically send that email over to the sales team so they can basically start a group chat or anything like that with that person and hopefully potentially close them. Let's keep this nice and simple. All we've basically done now is we've found our project, we've updated our project with the different details. Now what we want to do is actually begin creating tasks for the team. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and actually, in the local, I'm going to create a record. And in this case, I'm going to be creating a task. It's going to be very similar to what we did last time. But in this case, we're basically going to create tasks that are relevant to actually begin working. So in this case, I'm going to name this to onboarding call prep. And I'm going to set the start time as now, basically, over here. And the due date is going to be 2 days. So let's say we have a 2-day minimum before the actual onboarding call. You can also make this dynamic based on when they booked the onboarding call. For now, it doesn't matter. And for the task notes, I'm going to enter that information from the client. And I'm basically going to say, hey, check out these notes and prepare for the onboarding call. Check out the onboarding form response by the client and prepare for the onboarding call. Over here, I'm going to go down and just map all these different answers in terms of the ICP, what they sell, most popular products, and different testimonials. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this. So I'm going to use this after. And then in this, you could, for example, include a SOP in the relevant files. You can include links to SOPs, so on and so forth. But in this case, it doesn't really matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign it to the employee. And again, what you could do here, if you wanted to, you can even assign it to the employee dynamically based on who's actually assigned to the project. But in this case, I'm just going to say it's fixed. I say we already have one CSM. And I'm just going to link it directly to them. And the most important part here, guys, is that we're linking this to a specific project we created in the first step, and we search for in the previous step, so we have a clear record of what tasks are for what project. So in this case, we created a prep task. We could also create a second task, which is actually, I don't know, start working on ads. Start ads work. So now behind the scenes, as soon as they actually complete the onboarding form, it goes ahead and actually begins work, your team goes ahead and actually begins working on ads. Begin creating ads for client based on following information from onboarding form, just like that. This is very simple, doesn't have to be anything complicated. And this is something that helping your team out very slightly, because now rather than having to create tasks, or for example, let's say someone forgets to create a task or someone forgets to check for any new onboarding form responses, this happens automatically. The only other two things we need to do, in this case, I'm just going to condense it over to one, is I'm just going to send a client a thank you message. So I'm going to go back to our Gmail record and I'm going to go send an email again. And in this case, I'm going to go and then for recipient, I'm going to add that email from the previous step, which is basically the client's email. And for the subject, I'm going to say, thank you. And now I'm just going to basically say the same thing in this. I'm just going to ask it to generate a new one. Okay, now. And now it's basically going to go ahead and create that onboarding thank you email for me. Now, a couple of things that's important to kind of mention here, guys, is that this is a very, very simple kind of post onboarding form completion survey. In reality, at this point, you do a lot of more things. Like, for example, we usually spice this up a lot more. Like, what we do is we basically get the onboarding form responses, we send that over to some custom GPTs, and we basically actually begin working on the actual content. So, for example, we have a client, he does cold outreach. Before now, when they complete the onboarding form, we automatically start creating the scripts. We automatically set up the email campaigns within the actual systems and so on and so forth. And the same thing you can apply to lead gen, for example, for ads. Let's say you automatically create a sub account in high level. You automatically update your custom values. You automatically invite them. You automatically send them a handwritten card. You automatically create ad scripts based on the actual onboarding form responses. There's so much more you can do here. And I really want to emphasize that because this is a very, very simple example. But again, the whole idea is was to make it nice and simple so you can actually begin using it straight away. We don't want to make this complicated. We want to make it nice and simple. So hopefully you can just copy and paste the exact same thing directly into your agency. I'm going to move a lot of these black boxes because it's going to cause our automation to actually fail. But if you go back over here, we should be good to go. And I'm just going to enter the client name again just to make it nice and neat, which in this case will be John Smith over here. So that's pretty much it. So what we're going to do now is actually just run this and you should see all of this coming in. So I'm going to go over here. And to be honest, I'm just going to change this email now to Leo, just so we can actually see the email being sent out and avoid it bouncing back, basically. But in this case, obviously, you would not do this. You would keep this dynamic. So it would actually go over to the client's email. So I'm going to go now and just run this again. And what it's going to do now is basically create our email and create a record. If we check our project management system, first things first. Dun, dun, dun. For John Smith, we have over here, we can see all the different company notes that get brought in. These are basically the onboarding form responses. I'll format it a lot nicer, but it doesn't matter. We can see our two different tasks that have been automatically got created now, which is our onboarding call prep, which is automatically assigned and automatically linked to the project, and start ads work, which again is automatically linked to the project and assigned to the relevant employee. If you go over to our email as well, we have a new email, which is basically thanking us for completing our onboarding form. And in this case, I gave them basically a free gift. You don't have to do this, but it's just one of the things that we like to do. Whenever we get the clients to do something, we like to reinforce the decision by giving them some sort of gift pack for actually go ahead and actually completing that gift. This is very simple, guys. Like we've created just the automation that whenever the onboarding form gets complete, marks our system, sends a thank you message to the client, and basically takes care of everything that needs to happen immediately after that. This is just a very, very basic version. What we'll do here is add different things that, for example, unlocks different gifts for your client, kind of like you saw in the onboarding email. The most important thing on add here, guys, is that leverage that onboarding form information and leverage AI to actually start doing the work for you. You could automatically summarize the onboarding form and create a document that creates an ICP for the client. It just gives your CSM some sort of prep that they can actually start working on the sales calls. These are the things that will allow you to make your life a lot easier. And what I'm basically giving you here is the different foundations on how to actually do that. But there are different ways you need to enhance it. This is the onboarding process. And what we've basically done now is basically put together 4 different items or 4 different levers that you can pull to streamline your onboarding process, give your clients a better first impression, and makes your team life easier. This is not going to solve your onboarding process. I mean, this is like a very, very simple solution that you can start working on and start enhancing to actually make it better. In general, like I want you to more so adapt to the methodology and like the mindset behind onboarding. Like think of it as the first impression that you give your clients, and it's important that you use different tools to make it as easy as possible to give your clients a really, really good first impression. Think about expectations. Think about giving your clients the right mindset going in. That's going to make your life a lot easier and actually improving your onboarding onboarding process. So right now we basically mapped out our onboarding process, created 4 different flows, and created 4 different action items you can use to actually improve your onboarding process. This is going to give your clients a first impression of your clients. It's going to make them trust you more because there's no delays now in the process. They have a very, very kind of strict guideline as to exactly what happens with your team. So it avoids any mistakes, it avoids any delays, and increase that trust that clients actually has for you, and also allows you to give your clients faster results because this basically removes any sort of delays that may happen in the onboarding process. But secondly, because everything is super, super streamlined and super kind of subsequential in terms of, this happens, then this happens automatically, and then this happens, it's going to give your clients faster results because be less delayed in the actual performance side of things. So now we're winning. This is a very, very good place to be. Right now, we've dealt with basically the initial introduction to the team and the introduction to your agency. Now we need to talk about how we can actually prevent any sort of fluctuating results and have the systems that allow us to give your clients a consistent results over a long period of time, especially for lead gen agencies or any sort of like performance-based agencies. This is what the clients are here for. Yes, you can give them the best possible experience, and yes, you can do all this in onboarding to give them a good experience, but if you're not giving them actual results on a consistent basis, they will leave you for a competitor that can actually do this. So all we're going to do now is give you all the different systems you need to actually do this when you have 100 plus different clients at scale. This is not easy to do, guys. Usually what most agencies do is they dump their entire MMR into salaries and then lose all of that, or they invest or stress out their team to get them to follow up with clients and do on and so forth and check the results. It doesn't work because eventually your team will just leave you, and then you're going to continue getting fluctuating results for your clients. We're going to go over a system that will basically allow you to automatically check your client results and detect them so you can actually give them results on a consistent basis. But before we do that, let's just quickly summarize onboarding. When we talk about fixing churn, there's 2 different things we want to do. We're going to talk about the prevention side of things, which is basically onboarding, which is setting up the correct foundations, and then we're going to talk about detection. The detection side of things is basically what we're building out now. Regarding prevention, we set up an onboarding flow that you can basically use and install straight into your agency to streamline that whole process from start to finish, or more so kind of what happens immediately after they get onboarded or before the actual launch call / onboarding call itself. Now let's talk about how you can actually maintain the results at scale. For all of our clients, the way we like to do this is very simply set up a health score system. And what this basically does is every single week, it automatically scans each and every client results, pulling in different data from Facebook, high level, your calling software, and basically grades them depending on targets. These targets can be automatically set. It basically pulls in all their data, compares them to the targets. As you can see over here, basically gives them a score as to how they're performing every week after week. The idea of this is that every single week it gets a scan of your client's performance, gives you an idea of how they're actually performing, so you know kind of who to focus on. And basically over here, very simply, you can filter this by specific CSMs. So for example, let's say Natasha was one of the people, you'd focus on red, and this gives you an idea of everyone you need to focus on struggling results. The point of this system is that it gives you a high level overview of exactly who's performing bad and who needs a bit more attention. And these are the people that you jump on to actually give them better attention at scale. So right now you probably saw that and you're thinking, okay, cool, I need that. How can I actually set that up at my agency so I can actually give my clients consistent results at scale when managing over 100 different clients? And I'm not going to show you how to build that out exactly because I can't lie, it's very complicated and it's not something that we can do in a single YouTube video. We can break it down into future YouTube videos. So if you want an overview of that, drop a comment below. What we're going to do now is basically show you how you can apply the exact same foundations in your system by having a structured system that you use to basically check client results, grade them, and act as soon as any sort of intervention comes in. And very simply, we're going to follow a CCE system, which is the exact same principle that our own internal tools that we build for our clients are actually based off of. CCE is very simple. It stands for check, compare, and execute. So let's get straight into it. The first thing to do is you need to check client data for each individual client. Now, in this case, I'm not talking specifically about just Meta ads data, because as you saw in that dashboard I shared for you a second ago, we weren't just pulling in data from Meta. We're pulling in data from Meta. We're pulling in data from high level, so you can actually check their appointments. What's their lead to conversion ratio? What's their speed to lead? What is their appointment cost? We're not just care about Meta stuff right now. We care about pulling in as much data as possible, at least data that is actually matched to the client. This can be different things such as CPL, CPM, CPA, ad spend, number of appointments, the number of leads, the conversion percentage, the ROAS, any sort of cancel percentage. This is basically data we need to collect that actually matters to the client. The whole idea of this is that we're collecting all this different data to get an assessment of how the client is actually performing. And it's very, very important that we actually pulling the right data that we actually care about. So first things first, obviously you want to make sure data is accurate. That's the most important thing whatsoever, because if the data is being pulled in is not accurate, then you're just wasting your time. But secondly, you actually want to make sure that you're bringing in data that clients will actually care about. If I only brought in ad spend or only brought in different leads, this would not matter because that doesn't mean anything. I could be giving my clients 100 different leads. If all of them are unqualified bums who can't afford anything, there's no point of actually spending time and saying, hey, I'm getting you great results, when in reality you're not. So you need to have kind of metrics, but also secondary metrics to support the initial metrics to give you an idea of if those metrics are actually worth something and if you're actually getting clients good results. Every agency is different and service delivery is very, very different to what the actual client wants. So basically, the easiest way once you actually think about this is just have a think of what the last time someone complained to you about was. For example, did they complain about not having enough leads? Did they complain about too few appointments? Did they complain about appointments didn't show up? If that's the case, then you basically need to track how many leads am I getting to my clients, how many appointments am I getting to my clients, and what is the show up rate on those appointments. Those will be the 3 metrics that you can track on top of the initial ones that we have over there. Another example is you saying that all the leads are unqualified. Someone's complaining that, hey, every single lead you've got to me is unqualified and doesn't do anything for my company, or appointments are impossible close and there's no sort of ROI. In this case, you track the qualified percentage for leads, and you also track the ROAS on actual cash collected, which you can do within a CRM. The whole idea of this kind of stack is that we're checking client data on a very scheduled day. So for example, you could say every Friday, we're going to spend Friday going over all the different client data and track on these different items, maybe putting them in a spreadsheet or putting ChatGPT. And the most important thing, guys, is that you're tracking the right numbers in this stage, because this is basically what's going to make or break this whole reporting system. If we're not tracking the right numbers on a consistent basis, the numbers that our clients actually care about, then this whole health score indication and get an idea of who's performing well or not is not going to mean anything. Have a think about it. Maybe do on a whiteboard like I'm doing here, and have a think about what your clients actually care about. So for example, if everyone's complaining about a lack of ROI, track the average ROI. If everyone's complaining about a lack of qualified leads, then track the average qualified lead percentage. And this is an example of different metrics you can use. Clearly define these guys, especially if you add any sort of custom metrics, have a clear indication of what these actually mean. And these are basically going to be the appointments that you're going to be tracking on a consistent basis. So right now we've dealt with basically the check-in side of things. And what we've done now is that we've set up a basically kind of like a system where you're going to advise your team every single Friday, every single Monday, wherever it may be. You're basically going to be going through these results for every individual client and collecting this data, so we have an idea of how the client is actually performing. Obviously, this is very difficult to do at scale. Let's say you have 100 different clients, but it will be worth it. And if you stick it to the end, I'm going to show you how you can actually automate it. But even if you don't automate it and you just do this manually, try it for a week and you're going to see the difference it makes. Yes, it will take some time to actually put together, but what it's going to do is going to give you an idea, or at least give you all the data you need to know if a client's performing or not. So the first thing we have check, right? And all we're doing here is basically pulling in all the different data from the different metrics that we want to track. If you want some more data of that, I've got a whole video going over how you can actually find the right metrics to actually track for your clients. The second thing we're going to do is actually compare. So very simply now, we're basically going to compare client data for each individual target. Before we actually do this, it's very easy if you have like a group of clients and you split them up into individual groups. So for example, let's say you run a lead gen offer, but you have different products under that lead gen offer, then it might be worth splitting those into different targets. Because basically what we're doing in this stage is using the data that we had in a previous step, we're basically comparing it to our different targets, which is why if you have different product service delivery offerings, then you want to split those clients into different groups. So for example, let's say you run a lead gen agency and you have 3 different tiers. You have a just ads tier, you have an ads and CRM tier, and then you have a ads, CRM, and call center tier. Then those 3 targets need to be split into different groups, because obviously people on the 3rd tier that have a call center, well, you need to track different things such as speed to leads, because that's things that actually matter to you. So split clients up into different groups and split them up into different targets. For the call center, the speed to lead target might be 30 seconds, but for someone that just has ads, then that's up to them to speed to lead. So the target might be a bit different for that. You might not even want to track that, for example. So if you do have different service delivery offerings or levels of service delivery, then split them up into groups. If you just run general lead gen and everyone comes in for the same thing, first things first, well done for you. It makes life a bit easier. Secondly, you don't need to do this. This is only for people that have different service delivery options. And the next thing is very simply, we're basically comparing and seeing how well each of those individual metrics that we tracked in a previous stage are actually hitting to their targets. So for example, for CPL, we have got a CPL of 15, the target is 10. They are above target. Or for example, for ROAS, they say the ROAS target is 5 and they get a ROAS target of 1, they are below target, which is a good thing. And in this case, you basically want to group clients in 3 different buckets, the same way you saw on a system that I showed you about 5 minutes ago. And you want to book them out into green, yellow, and red. This is a simple kind of green light system or traffic light system that we use across all our different partners when we build out these custom systems. Who's performing good, who's having a really, really good experience. She's performing yellow, which basically means that not having the best experience, but are not at the very, very risk of churning just yet. And then who's performing red, which is basically very, very bad, and we need to jump in immediately to help them as soon as possible. When you're making these assumptions or grouping them into groups, don't look at different metrics. When it comes to health score, putting weights to these metrics. So for example, if you know that conversion rate matters a lot, or for example, ROAS matters a lot, you can make this worth more than the CPL. Each of these are kind of like a fair split, because some metrics will mean more than others. For example, ROAS might mean a lot more than the cost per lead for most people, because they actually care about making money rather than just having a cheap cost per lead. So set metrics to these. What we're doing in this stage is we're basically just checking the metrics we collected previously to our targets, which may or may not be segmented by different groups, and then just basically giving a client an assessment of how well they're performing. Now, guys, we've gone ahead and done our check. We've gone ahead and compare. We need to move on to the last step of this, which is actually execute. And this is the most important part of the CCE framework, because now you want to actually do something about this for each individual client. If you don't actually execute on this step, everything you're doing before this point is a complete waste of time, because there's no point getting that data, comparing it to targets, and then not doing anything about people that aren't performing as well. So in this case, we have 3 different groups of clients, and there's 3 different things we can do for each of this individual group of clients. For now, we're going to talk about green clients. What do we do when someone's a green client? Well, from here, there's a couple of different things you can do. It doesn't just mean just because they're doing well, we're just going to leave them. First things first, we can pass on the practices of what these guys are doing to our other clients, so we can improve our clients' results. Secondly, you can go ahead and collect testimonial, or you can also go ahead and upsell them, or you can send like a positive feedback message saying, hey, keep smashing it. Just because they're doing well doesn't mean there's nothing to do here. Within our system, we always create action items for every single item that kind of gets processed on a weekly basis. And one of the action items that we create most commonly is just sending them some positive feedback, reinforce them, give them some sort of like belief in themselves that they're performing well, and let them know that they're doing good. The second bucket is basically people that are doing yellowish. These are people that are not necessarily performing bad, but it's people that are not kind of there in terms of where targets need to be. This is basically your early warning system, guys. The whole video is about 2 systems that you can use to actually stop churn. These guys are not performing as well. Let me do something before they stop getting horrible results and then leave my agency. This is the early warning system that you have for your clients. So for example, let's say you have a target CPR of 10 and your clients start slipping down. They're going to 12, 13, 14, 15. This is the early warning system that says, hey, you need to give these guys a bit more attention so you can actually improve their results before they start moving to the red and actually leaving. The most important thing for both of these different stages, red and yellow, is communication. When you first spot this and you spot they're not performing as well as everyone else, don't just keep that to yourself. Don't just do something without saying something. Actually share that with the client, because you want to actually make sure that they are very, very in the loop with what's happening behind the scenes. Whenever someone's a yellow, go ahead and send a message saying, hey, we saw results slip out this week. This is what we're doing. We're going to update the creative. We're going to update the copy. So you want to give them an idea of how you're actually going to be helping them to improve the results. You never want it to be a thing where they're not performing as well. They send you a message saying, hey, by the way, I saw ads dip, what's going on? Because at that point, they're leaving in confusion. You should be the expert here. They shouldn't be coming to you to ask you what's going on. You should already keep them in a loop with everything that's going on behind the scenes. This is the most important thing of this whole kind of churn framework, at least for the second part of this, is just communication. If you're not communicating what you're actually doing, you're just wasting your time. Because especially with ads, things might fix straight away, but they might need some time to actually ramp up. And if you're communicating with your clients, that buys you a bit of time to get better results. But if you're not saying anything and you're just keeping quiet behind the scenes, then this is a complete waste of time, guys. In both of these stages, you actually need to communicate. So for yellow, can I just summarize quickly? You want to go ahead and communicate what you're actually doing, and you want to basically just identify what the issue is and try implement your different things to fix this. What we like to do for different clients is we like to set up different SOPs for all the different things that may happen. So for example, what if the CPL is down? What's SOPs to follow to actually do? They need to update the creative. They need to update the copy. They need to update the actual ad format. And then from that, you just create a tasking and project management system and have your CSM or media buyer actually execute it. The last stage is the red stage. This is the worst possible stage. At this point, this is where clients are getting worse results. In most cases, go from green to red. It's usually a progressive downhill battle. But at this point, someone's getting bad results. They're getting bad results for a couple of weeks. This is the clients that you want to focus on, because these are the clients that are actually going to leave you. There is such thing as a voluntary churn. Some clients you might not just be able to get good results for. Maybe that means they shouldn't have been signed on in the first place. But in general, for these clients, you basically want to have like an emergency meeting and just communicate as much as possible in terms of what you're doing, even for example on a daily basis, to kind of check the results. These are the clients that need the most attention, because these are the clients that are most likely to leave. And this is mainly applies to kind of performance agencies, especially when we're looking at numbers and we're mainly focusing on numbers themselves and the metrics they're actually getting. Is mainly for performance-based agencies. This is why I'm saying all of this. For example, if you're on a creative agency, this doesn't really apply as much, because people will be willing to kind of stick out a bit longer. But performance-based agencies, much time, so you want to make sure that you're using most of it. So at this stage, for example, you can schedule different meetings. You need to send updates, and basically every other day, just reinforcing why they're getting results and what you're doing behind the scenes, and just give them some sort of sense of progress so they can actually put that trust in you and kind of believe that you're actually going to help them out of there. And that's pretty much it, guys. The most important things in this stage right here, in execute stage, if I haven't emphasized this already, which I'm sure I have, is just communication. You need to communicate with the client as much as possible to give them that sense of progress, not just if they're yellow or red. Even if they're green, communication will play such a big role in helping you decrease your churn rate, and also holding your team accountable to actually saying these things to the client and having that sort of accountability that, hey, I said I'm going to change the copy. Now I need to go ahead and actually change the copy, or else they're going to complain. This is basically the CCE framework, which will allow you to basically maintain your client's results at scale just by completing 3 different things. What I usually like to do, especially if doing this manually, which will take a bit of time, set out, for example, a day where you're going to be doing the checks, set out a day where you're doing comparisons, and then obviously for execution, it will most likely be the week. But this will basically be what's going to be guiding your team on what they need to do throughout the week, these different health score checks. And the most cool thing about this is that they can compare data from last week to see if this is improving or worsening. And then from there, you can obviously get an idea of if the different action items you completed last week were a good thing or a bad thing. The most important thing about this, guys, is obviously communication, but you also want to make sure that you can do this every single week on a consistent basis. Don't just do this once and then leave it. This is something that needs to be happening on a regular basis, so you can actually get an idea of how kind of results are fluctuating. For performance-based agencies, results matter. And even, for example, in the advertising space, results will fluctuate. So it's important that you get early warning system on these and you actually execute to fix the results before they start going up and down, which is what clients don't want. They want to get stable results over a consistent basis so they can continue working with you. You can decrease the number of clients that leave you every single month, increase your retention, increase your LTV, and obviously make more money. So guys, that's pretty much it. Now, this is CCE framework. Obviously, this is a lot easier to do when you have 5 clients and it's just you. When you wake up one day and you have 100 plus clients, it's a lot harder to actually do this and it takes a lot of time. For example, let's say you have 9 different software you need to check. Let's say Google Sheets for client results, Go at Level to track appointments, Meta to track the conversions, any sort of booking software. And let's say it just takes you even 15 minutes per client, which is a very, very generous guess, to check results. Once you have 100 clients, that's 16 hours that it's going to take you just to do the checker step. And that's excluding the actual execution and the analysis, also the compare side of things. So if you want to make your life a bit easier, then I recommend checking out one of the links in the description to check out our Churn Buster tool. Very simply, we're going to build your custom internal tool that shows you every client's performance and alerts your team the moment a client's results start slipping so that you can be proactive and save them from leaving you. This is the system that I showed you guys at the beginning of the system, which basically automatically grades client performance, automatically scripts the data all in one place, so you don't have to scatter around all your different tools to get the client's results. It automatically compares them to your targets for you and automatically generates action items, so your CSMs or your media buyers know exactly what they need to do to actually fix the client's results. This is basically a system that uses visibility, proactiveness, and accountability to predict and fight churn. We have 7-figure agencies using this, and it's the sole thing that allows these agencies to maintain the client experience and maintain the client results at scale. So if any of that was interesting and you don't want to go through the second step of this whole system manually every single week, which I 100% recommend you do if you don't want to buy into this, but you're going to see it's going to take a lot of time. Still worth it though, don't get me wrong. Then check out one of the links in the description. Fill out a short form to see if you qualify, and then you can chat with me to see if the system can actually help you. Apart from that, guys, that's it for me today. What we basically gone over today is 2 simple systems that you can set up to actually go ahead and fix your churn. These systems are based on 2 key principles. They're based on the prevention side of things, which is basically the onboarding, and then the detection, which will give you the tools you need to do to set the right expectations from the get-go, give your clients a first impression, but also allow you to automatically get an idea of when clients' results are slipping. Who do I need to give more attention to? Who do I need to actually make sure is getting good results on a consistent basis and actually provide them that A-class service? So rather than having fluctuating results that fluctuate every single week, you can have consistent results for your clients, which in turn will allow you to have predictable and preventable churn, decreasing the churn rate, increasing your retention, increasing your LTV, and ultimately making you more money in your agency. So your agency will look like this. You'll have lower leaky churn coming from the bucket, and you're going to have a bigger bucket because your capacity is actually going to increase once you have the right systems to allow you to maintain your clients at scale. That's pretty much it from me, guys. If you have any questions regarding anything I talked about today, leave a comment below. We are a very, very small channel, so we see every single comment and we answer in depth. If anything I said regarding Churn Buster itself and our new system is interesting, then check out the link in the description. We have an amazing offer going on right now, and it's generally one of the best things that we've ever set up for agencies, because this is what drives the impact that will allow you to stand up with competitors. You basically have a system that takes care of the fulfillment for you. You don't need this if you have 10, 15 clients. When you're at a small level, it's very easy to do, and it's important that you kind of do that on a consistent basis. But when you're getting to the level like our clients are, where they're managing over 150 clients. I mean, imagine that, 150 different ad accounts, 100 different Go at Level accounts, 150 results you need to track. It gets very, very hard, even when you have CSMs. So what our system does is allow your CSMs to give your clients the best possible experience, which in turn will allow them to get better results, and they will stay with you for longer. You don't need to buy into that necessarily. Just follow what I've done in this video and you will improve your churn rate by having a very, very good onboarding process to give your clients the best possible first impression and experience and set the right expectations. And secondly, go ahead and maintain the results on a consistent basis using the CCE framework. Apart from that, guys, is it from me today. If you also want any of the automations or anything like that, they're going to be for free in our school community. Go ahead and check that out. One of the links in the description will guide you there. Use this more so as a base for different things you can add onto, especially for the onboarding side of things. This is basically just a generic system, a generic template that I want you to make your own by adding your own twist to it. For example, using AI to start creating the work for your onboarding process, adding some small things for your closes to actually tell your clients you can set their expectations. But in general, these are the two frameworks and systems you can use within your agency to improve your churn rate. If this video helpful, leave a big thumbs up, subscribe for more content like this. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll catch you in the next one. Appreciate you for watching. Bye-bye.